This is Gene Adam, former lead singer of Iced Earth. Be sure to subscribe to Podcast and Stone, and don't forget, join our community on social media. Metal lives.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Iced Earth community, welcome to Podcasting Stone, the only podcast 100% dedicated to Iced motherfucking Earth, and also dedicated to all of the Iced Earth related stuff that's coming out recently. I am joined, as always guys, with the incomparable Chuck Hoskins. We are here today with the one and only Greg Seymour. Greg, how you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you, man?
I'm very good.
Cool.
I'm very good today. I have my obligatory Iced Earth mug for the proceedings.
Nice.
Chuck, how are you, my
Welcome to the
friend?
show, Greg. I'm
Thanks.
doing great. It's a fantastic time to be a fan right now. I can't even listen to any non-Iced Earth related items right now. I just can't. There's too much to be excited about.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
There's a lot going on, that's for sure, man.
How can we possibly afford all this music?
We're going to die trying.
Indeed, sir. Now, Greg, the first question I have, as it's current news, this new John Schafers Purgatory project. I can't help but notice an absence of the one Greg Seymour on drums, being replaced by the Mark Prater. Is there a reason that you did not make it on this release?
Yeah, mainly because at the time the whole process was talked about and started, which was last fall, last October 2017. John Schafer and myself were still not on speaking terms. Hadn't talked to each other in over 25 years. However, due to Podcast and Stone, that kind of brought us back together last year, shortly after they'd already done all the basic tracking and stuff. So, that was one reason. And hey, Mark Prater, not a bad guy to be replaced by, huh?
Right.
Hell of a drummer, man.
How did it feel when you heard Dracula? It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I actually heard it, back in maybe May of this year, when Bill had a copy of a rough mix. It was weird. It was cool, but it was strange to hear it again. And the production is great. Gene's sounding great. That really, I was really happy to hear Gene sounding so good on that. And I've heard the rest of it. Only the other songs I've only heard once. But yeah, you guys will love it, man.
I cannot wait to hear the rest, man.
Did you have any writing credits back then?
I don't believe so. I mean, I threw in a riff here and there. I screwed around on guitar a little bit back then. None of the songs that we recorded, is Purgatory. I don't think I had anything that, was something that I came up with, guitar-wise. But, I've never, had a credit really per se, although I did throw in a few things here and there.
Nice. Jason, you want to have us start back at the beginning? We've kind of dealt with the present. Let's kind of go back a little bit. Can you tell us about your introduction to music, your early influences, and your introduction to John?
Sure, man. Introduction to music was from some of my first memories when I was 2-3 years old. there was always music around the house being played. I've got older brother and a couple of older sisters, and they were always, playing anything from, like the Jackson 5 to Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, So there was a wide mix of music being played, and some of my earliest influences, people that I admired as a young kid, were, drumming wise, had to be Keith Moon from The Who, Bill Ward from Sabbath, and obviously John Bonham. I don't think there was a drummer, that's my age, that's into rock and roll or heavy metal, that wasn't inspired by at least one or two of those guys. And then just bands in general. I was always into like the original Alice Cooper band, Zeppelin, Sabbath, a little later on Kiss, Aerosmith, all that kind of stuff, man. Anything that was kind of scary to me at the time, like, pictures of Alice Cooper and stuff like that, that was always intriguing to me as a young kid. But yeah, I kind of listened to a lot of stuff back then, still do. There was a lot of, stuff on the radio back in the 70s that was, a lot better than the pop music today, I guess. Just, a wider variety of on your regular radio station, I guess, back then. They'd run the gamut from Aerosmith to, the Bee Gees and stuff like that. So, I mean, you got influenced in a lot of different ways, man.
Right.
So, how did it come to be that you decided that you kind of wanted to form a band and actually play like heavy music?
Again, that goes back to being, probably 7, 8 years old, standing around with a hockey stick or whatever I could find to use as a guitar and jumping all over the house, when no one was around, cranking one of my sister's stereos or my brother's stereos. I wasn't supposed to play them with, but of course I did. I'd, see my sister's Van Halen albums or something and pop it on and jump around the house, and I was hooked, man. I wanted to, get on a stage or in a rehearsal room or wherever it may be and just, make music, man. And then as I got into my teens, I started meeting other people at that point that, played either guitar or bass or drums even. And, any chance we could, if someone had a drum set somewhere and a guitar, we'd try and make some noise. And usually playing something simple like Living After Midnight or something like that, and just the straight ahead stuff, and probably annoying the shit out of the neighbors, but,
You're not doing it right if you don't annoy neighbours, right?
Exactly. That's for sure, man. You want to piss people off, man. That's half of the fun of it,
How old were you when you got your first kit?
Well, I didn't have my own kit until after John and I had moved to Florida, when we were both, I guess, 17 at the time. But over the years, my brother would have a set, laying around the house somewhere, and he'd always get a drum set and then have it for a little while and, sell it, and then 6 months later get another one, and, and again, he didn't want me playing it and stuff, but when he wasn't home and he was off at work or something, I would get on there and bash around and, just try and figure some songs out and, play along with records and things like that. But my first set I bought after John and I had moved to Tampa in 1985.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Jason.
Sorry. So you're self-taught? You didn't actually take lessons or anything like that?
No. About the only lessons I've ever had was, again, this goes back, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My brother, showed me how to keep your basic, beat, just dum dum da dum 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 da, stuff like that. He'd put on some headphones, or put headphones on me, and maybe put on a Black Sabbath or a Steppenwolf album or something, and just say, play along, try and figure it out, and that was about, any like formal training or something. Other than that, it was just, I didn't really play a lot until after hooking up with John and, just working on our, different songs that he had, that he was trying to work out. So I guess, I don't know if that hurt me or helped me, as time went on. I think I struggled a lot longer on things than someone that might have had some, basic lessons, like, learning rudiments and things like that. I kind of always had to figure shit out the hard way,
Cool.
Nice. I know guitarists kind of have like the traditional don't do this in Guitar Center riffs, like Smoke on the Water and stuff. Is there a go-to drum track that all new drummers play?
I don't know, man. Maybe something if you're into, hard rock and stuff, and like Led Zeppelin, something like that song Rock and Roll. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you try and emulate the beginning of that song or something. Something I always like to kick around was I Love It Loud by Kiss. Just that
nice.
Heavy ass boom, boom, blah, boom, it's an easy beat. Just shit like that. Metal Health, I think, was another one from Quiet Riot, that's simple song, and most kids that were learning guitar could play the riff to that. So yeah, I think, more simplistic stuff like that.
Nice.
Yep.
Cool. So take us through the journey from when you met John and how that friendship kind of went forwards.
Okay. John and I were introduced by a mutual friend, a dude named Sean Odell, that I knew probably since 6th grade when he came to the school I was going to. And somehow he knew John. I don't know. I know John had lived somewhere in the Indianapolis area of Indiana. And at some point, I guess, they relocated to Fort Wayne, which is where I was from. And he moved into the same neighborhood that this dude Sean lived in. And Sean was playing guitar, pretty decent guitarist by the time he was like 16. He's like a year older than us. And it was like the summer, or maybe late spring of 1983. And I remember we were hanging out, and he said, "Hey man, this guy John, is new here, and he just moved up here or whatever, and he's learning to play guitar, and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Well, is he into stuff like Maiden and Kiss and Judas Priest and all that stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, he's all into that stuff." And so he's like, he'll be coming up here in a couple days. You want to hang out with him? And I'm like, "Sure, man. We'll party or hang out and talk and whatever." And so he brought John around a couple days later, and we kind of checked each other over a little bit, and he's kind of looked the same. We're wearing concert shirts, Levi jeans, with holes in them, of course, and both had somewhat long hair and everything, and we started talking, and we noticed that our interests were the same. Again, Kiss, Maiden, Priest, Ozzy, stuff like that. And I remember asking him, like, "You own a leather jacket, man, like a biker jacket?" And we were all into that kind of shit. We've all had chain wallets, shit like that. And he's like, "Yeah, man, so it's like summertime, and like, we'll wear your jacket tomorrow, man, and we'll meet here again." And we met up, and both had our leather on, and kind of dorky when you look back on it, but hey, man. And anyway, again, we kept talking of music and everything, and listening to stuff, and as time went on, I ended up like going over to his house, and he was showing me some stuff he could play on guitar and a couple ideas that he'd had of his own, and we talked about starting a band that, played their own music. We didn't want to do cover songs or anything like that. And so that's where the seed was planted, I guess. And we wouldn't really, it was 83, we probably, it took another couple of years before we actually jammed together, and started writing our own songs. But in those 2 years, I moved away to Augusta, Georgia for a while in 1984, and then I reconnected with John, about 9 or 10 months later when he came to Florida on vacation. So kind of how that all went down.
Now, if some people may know, some people might not know, there was a band that John Schafer kind of had, sort of, not really, before Purgatory, which was the Rose. Now, that was during your kind of time together, right, before Purgatory.
It was, yeah. Actually, I think that came to John. That probably came in late '83 into 1984, about the time I had moved away to Georgia. John had, come up with the idea of that, with that name, and then, in 1984, he actually had gotten together with a couple guys in Indiana that were, I don't even remember how he met them. I wasn't there, but they were working on a couple songs that, putting songs together with riffs that John had. It never went really anywhere. I think they might have practiced as, like a drummer and a, maybe a bass player or something, and might have jammed like a couple times, I guess, in some dude's living room. And then he, told me about the name and everything, and we were corresponding either on the telephone or writing letters back and forth back then. And, I was like, that's cool. He showed me the logo and everything. And, we never, when I moved back to Indiana in 1985, the Rose was gone by that point, and the name Purgatory and the logo had already been designed by John. And I don't know what the change was, why he changed from the Rose to Purgatory. I'm sure he told me at some point, but that was, a long time ago, and I don't remember for sure. But
Purgatory sounds way more metal.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's for sure.
So you ended up getting back with John from your the vacation trip. Can you tell us about the early days of hot roof mopping?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, we hooked up, in the spring of 1985. I had been living in Florida with one of my sisters after leaving Georgia, and anyway, John came down with his mother and stepfather on spring break, and he called me like the day before they were leaving, and asked if I could hang out when he was down here, and I was like, yeah, man, no problem. So we hung out at a beach for a while. They stayed at some beach here in Florida, and we hung out and talked of our plans for what we wanted to do in the future, and with music and everything. Long story short, in that week that we were here in Florida hanging out, he asked me if I could go back to Indiana with him, and he asked his mom and everything, and she's like, yeah, that's fine, and so anyway, I went back to Indiana with them. That's where John and myself and a guy named Gary Custard, aka Nicky Raven, who is a guitar player that John was jamming with, we hung out and started putting songs together, and actually rehearsed for about a week up there, and we're working on songs like John had one called Grave Robbers, which was actually did that song end up becoming no, that wasn't one. It was a song. It ended up becoming Colors, years later. Can't think of what we were calling it back then, but I mean, Storm Rider, the main riff for Storm Rider was around at that point. You know, and anyway, we were hanging out in Indiana, living with his mom and stepdad, and we were getting too rowdy, getting arrested, getting in fights, and, you know, just causing havoc all the time. And she finally got sick of our shit and told us we had to leave. So our only option at that point was, like, you know, again, I'd been in Tampa a couple times prior to this, but, you know, I was like, dude, I know there's a music scene in Tampa. There's clubs that let bands play original music and stuff. And I'm sure my sister will let us stay with her for a little while. And so I called my sister, said, hey, we got to get out of John's parents' house. You know, do you mind if we come down? She's like, no, that's cool. So we left Indiana, both of us with less than, you know, $200 in our pockets, and headed for Florida. Nicky would come down later on, about 6 months later. But he, you know, looking back, I thought about this a little while ago, and he was, I think, like 16 at the time. I thought he was the same age as John and myself, but he was 16, and I think it was a little rough on him, leaving mom and coming down,
Sure.
and, you know, starving, eating ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if we were lucky, you know, and just having shitty jobs, busting your ass, you know, and living like an animal, kind of. But then we did, you said, the hot tar roofing thing that John and I were doing. We were going to a day labor place. You know, we'd have to get up at like 5 in the morning and go sit on this sidewalk in front of this building, and, you know, hope that somebody would have a job that we could do that day. And one of those jobs, John, I think, got picked one day and went and did some roofing, and they picked him, I think, to go to the job because he had a car and he could haul like 2 or 3 other people, and he'd get a little extra money for the day for toting other people to the job site. Eventually I got sent there with him, and then eventually we got hired on with this company, making like $5 an hour. And it's pretty brutal, man. We were, you know, young. You know, it's summertime in Florida. We're standing on a roof with no shade all day long. You know, and then you're dealing with hot tar that's like 600 degrees anyway. And you know, so we definitely paid some dues, man. You know, we'd go to practice at night, just John and myself, with blisters all over our hands. And you know, I remember a couple times I actually taped my drumsticks to my hands because I could hardly squeeze my hands closed. You know, but that's back when, you know, we were determined we were going to do something. And we just kept plugging away, working on songs like Storm Rider and a lot of the songs that you see on the old Purgatory stuff. You know, that's online. Like, you know, I can't even think of the names right now, but Storm Rider was one of them. You know, just working our asses off, man, to try and make something happen.
So, what came next? Was it, did you meet Bill or Gene next at this point?
We met Gene first, and I want to say it was at the Sunset Club, which was a place that we could always go to and get served when we were underage. You know, so we always sought those kind of places out, you know. If we wanted to go somewhere and find a place that was easy to get into that didn't card us. Again, at the time we met Gene, John and I both, you know, just turned 18 years old, so yeah, we were definitely underage. And we'd go to the Sunset because no one messed with us there, and I don't know if Gene was with Richard or not, but I know we talked to him about, you know, it's like, hey man, I'm jamming with this bass player, been, you know, working together for a couple months or so, and you know, he's got some stuff, you know, really, really cool riffs, and we're kind of like, well, it's us two, you know, guitar and drums, and we're working on our own stuff too, so, you know, why don't we try and see if we can hook up. And it just so happened that Richard also, who was living at his parents' house at the time, had a rehearsal space in a garage that was in their backyard, and they already had it like soundproofed, and if you could really soundproof it that well, I mean, you know, it was all carpeted, and they had, you know, I think carpet on the walls and stuff. And so after meeting Gene that one night, it was within a week, the four of us hooked up over at Richard's, and you know, they played a couple things they had, we played a couple things we had. Everybody seemed to be digging it, and you know, we thought we would move forward with it. Well, somewhere in that same week or a 2-week period, some girls that we knew, you know, told us about this guitarist, that, you know, a lead guitarist that they knew, named Bill. So I don't know if they gave us his number or how that worked, or we gave him our phone number or something like that. And anyway, we got in touch with Bill, and he came over to Richard's, I believe, you know, like sometime within the first week of us, you know, going over to Richard's. And, you know, he plugged in, you know, we just started jamming, and we're like, here, you know, throw a solo in here, or wherever you feel like, you know, and, you know, that's kind of how it came together. It just, you know, Bill just clicked with us, we clicked with Richard clicked with us, and, you know, everything just, it happened really fast, man. There was a good vibe in the air. It, you know, I mean, Gene and Richard already had a handful of songs that were pretty much completed. Same with John and myself. So right off the bat, you know, within a couple weeks, we already had, you know, probably 8 to 10 songs that we pretty much knew all the way through. You know, so we were able to just, you know, we probably did it a little prematurely, but we started, you know, jamming out anywhere we could within about 3 weeks of forming the band. Probably wasn't the greatest performances ever, I'd imagine, but, you know, we were determined we were gonna, you know, make a name, and I guess we did.
Nice.
Coolio.
Now, just as I have a question, and before Gene is entered into the picture, John is a very good vocalist also. Did he always want another vocalist, or did he ever say, you know what, I'm good enough to, you know, to do this also? Do you remember if that ever was talked about?
I know he wrote lyrics, and he would come up with, like, you know, vocal patterns and melodies and stuff to some of the things, you know, to some of the music that he wrote. He never expressed to me that he wanted to, you know, sing or anything like that. He would do it every now and then just to, you know, to try to show somebody, right, you know, where the song was going or something like that. But no, he never, you know, in my time in the band, you know, he would do a little bit of stuff on stage or in the studio, just like, you know, maybe something on Storm Rider, or, you know, or throw in a little bit of, you know, backing vocals and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys are a 5-piece at this point. I had heard that Richard was actually being kind of stolen by another band. Can you tell us the story that leads to his exit and David's entrance?
Oh, yes. Richard Bateman, first of all, was one badass bass player, man. The dude, I think he was born with a bass. You know, he was one of those people that, shit, by the time he was 16, 17 years old, man, he could play, you know, anything that Steve Harris could play, and or any of the, you know, like Cliff Burton stuff or anything, man. The dude was just a natural at that. Anyway, you know, shortly after we formed, and we're working on all this new material, we're starting to gig out and, you know, do stuff, you know, locally. I don't know if, you know, somebody from Morris Sound Studios had told someone with Megaforce Records, I think it was Megaforce, either Megaforce or Combat, that Agent Steel, you know, a California band, they were on that label, and I think they were getting ready to work on their second album. and that they were going to do it at Morrisound or something like that. Well, anyway, they had lost their bassist, and I think they were also looking for a guitar player at that time. So, they come to Tampa and had somehow heard of Richard. Everybody in town knew Richard if you were into, metal. So anyway, they had talked to Richard behind our backs, and I guess they set up some kind of like party that we could play at. It was like a keg party, so that they could basically scope Richard out in a live setting, right? So none of us knew that. We're all just thinking, ooh, they got a record deal. Maybe we can, they could put in a good word for us, and we'll, impress them or something, and maybe we can end up with a record deal of our own. Anyway, they were scouting Richard, and so this is around Christmas time, 1986, I think. And anyway, I guess Richard impressed them enough, and so he tells us he's leaving the band, which we were all highly pissed off about, and it was more like they were breaking up the brotherhood, or whatever. And anyway, so we were pretty pissed off about all that, and I guess they'd also, the singer from Agent Steel had approached John Schafer about, playing guitar with them, and he was like, hell no, I got my own thing going, man, I'm not going to play for anybody. And anyway, so Richard went on to Agent Steel. I think he did a live album or something with them at the Hammersmith over in London, and he was with them for like less than a year, and then he went on to other bands like Nasty Savage and stuff. Anyway, after he was gone, we're all sitting around an apartment of one of ours, all pissed off and probably breaking shit and throwing beer all over the place, and just being stupid.
Feeling sorry for yourselves, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we put an ad out locally, like there were a couple little local music magazines back then, and we put ads in them, and I guess Dave answered an ad in one of those, and we met him and talked to him a bit, and he was kind of like a total opposite of us. He was kind of a little more well-mannered than the rest of us were, not a complete asshole, and which we changed after a while, by the way. But anyway, it was almost like we corrupted the guy. I mean, a hell of a bass player, and we could see that from the very beginning. Easygoing attitude, and at the end of the day, after we decided, this is our guy, man. I mean, we really didn't skip a beat after losing Richard, so that was a big, uplift to us. We weren't sitting around moping, and we had another guy in the band. We had direction again, and Dave came in. Dave always was great at putting the pieces together, kind of like Bill always was. With if we're stuck somewhere, hey, try this, hey, try that, or Dave would, hey, Greg, try doing this, or let's use this piece and see if we can put this song together. Yeah, so everything worked out great. We didn't think it would at first. We weren't really set back that much. I think we lost about a month of being able to play out or anything like that. But when Dave came in the band, shit just clicked again. And and again, then we ruined him as a person within about 6 months. So.
I suppose Purgatory does that to you.
Yeah, it used to, man.
So you would go on to I'm pretty much telling you stuff you already know, but anyway, you would go on to record 2 demos of Purgatory. I am correct there, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2. I know we did what was it, Horror Show and
Psychotic Dreams.
Psychotic Dreams, yeah. There were several times. I know we went in to record more than 2 times. However, I think one time we did like the Final Conflict. I think we might have recorded that song by itself. We just went in to do that. Like Psychotic Dreams was, 3 songs, I think. And then the Horror Show was another 3. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, we'd go in, we had other recordings too, but prior to going to Morrisound, we tried recording in some guy's, living room. Oh, I got a 4-track recorder, man. I can, and it was horrendous. I wish we would have, somebody would still have a copy of that, because it would be great for a laugh, man. It was pretty horrible. But all those things like Horror Show and Psychotic Dreams, and again, we always were in such a hurry about everything, man. We'd write songs like Jack and In Jason's Mind and things like that, and within a few weeks, man, we got to record this, and we barely knew the songs all the way through, and we're wanting to record them. Who doesn't want to hear their stuff, recorded in a studio? Sometimes I think it was to our detriment that, we went in a little too early. The songs weren't quite developed. If you play a song for 6 months, it's not exactly as, it was when you first started doing it. Everybody's worked out their parts. You thought of little things here and there to add or to take away. And go ahead, man.
I was gonna say, and like, as a musician myself, I've found with me anyway, even when you think you've figured out your parts, the more you play the song, you kind of slowly change what you're doing as you go on as well. Like, regardless of what you thought you had set in stone, it's never set in stone. There's always, especially drums, I'm always changing certain little bits in my band stuff. So
yeah, I've always found that to be the case too. Over time, you find, hey man, let me try throwing this in here. You might have been doing something for 6 months or so, and then you're playing and let me try this, and you try it. Ooh, that was cool. I'll keep that. And yeah, you're always tweaking things out a bit. I think that might be the same with like guitarists. When they're playing lead or something like that. Your solo stays pretty much the same, but here and there you throw in a couple different, or you try different things at least. You might stick with it, you might not. I don't know. But yeah, we always were rushing. I don't know again why. We all had this burning, in us that we had to, it's like this big race to get a record deal or something. And I mean, I think things probably would have, our product might have been a little better had we waited sometimes, instead of just rushing. And all those demos, were recorded on a $400 budget, $500, whatever we could scrape together. We always had a back in those days, a band fund, we called it, where every week you put in $20. That's 5 guys putting in $20 a week. You got $100 a week that went to making flyers or stage props or recording budget or things like that. So we always had some money going, but we never threw a lot of it, or I guess it seemed like a lot at the time, $500 to record, but it wasn't shit. So
now I just want to know like the band's mindset when it comes to like quote unquote getting a record deal, because looking at obviously today's kind of climate, a record label really isn't much value. They're more kind of valuable for more marketing, if anything. So what was the mindset in the band back in the 80s? What did you guys expect from a record label, the value of a record label back then?
Well, at first, we were pretty naive. I know John and myself were, for sure. Like when we got to meet Nasty Savage for the first time, we were thinking, oh man, they got an album on Metal Blade Records, man. These guys, we thought they would have, didn't have day jobs, and they, just got to lay around and party all the time and write music and tour, So that's what we were wanting to do. We wanted to, not have to work, number one, and just work on music. but we thought, a record deal, again, we didn't know much about the business at that time. We thought that, you'd make a tape, send it to somebody, they'll like it. Hey, you want to deal with such and such records? Yeah, man. We thought you'd sign a deal, you'd get to quit your job, and they basically would put you on the road, and you didn't have to work at, a 9-to-5 job. That's what we thought. That's what we wanted, so that we could just concentrate on music all the time. And obviously that's not how it works. But, after we kind of learned the ins and outs a little bit, and our dreams were shattered.
That's always the way. Always the way.
Yeah, we got to, we realized that, again, the record company back then could be useful by, getting you on a tour, getting your product out again, distribution, like you were saying, that, nowadays that's what basically they are, is a distributor. So that,
like, to me, a label is another avenue for promotion, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, it was a different thing back then. They would front you all this money, and then you'd go make a product for them, and they'd try to sell it and try to make their money back. And we were just looking for somebody that mainly we wanted to not have to work day jobs, so that we could just work on music all the time and be put in a camper or a RV of some kind and get put on a tour and just go, man.
As we get ready to talk about the Enter the Realm demo here in a couple of minutes, was Bill still with you guys when you started working on that Enter the Realm, or was Randall already in the mix at that point?
I don't believe Bill was in the band at the time that we really started. John started coming up with the concept and the songs and all that for Enter the Realm. I think Randy, that was relatively around the time when, Randy was just first in the band, I believe, when John started getting that idea together for Enter the Realm and the songs and everything.
Okay. How did you feel about the name change? Did you like it, or was you disappointed, or do you remember?
Yeah, we were all disappointed. Again, it was almost like when Richard left the band or something, and then you're sitting around, damn it, this sucks. What are we gonna do? And then Iced Earth was a name that John had heard of when he was living in Fort Wayne, Indiana. When we were in high school, there was another band in town at that time that had that name. And one of their guys died actually pulling into the high school that we went to. His car was hit by a concrete truck or some shit and killed the guy. And that band had, disbanded after that. And we kind of did it as we were sitting around one night talking about it, and we wanted to, we thought the name was cool. It was different than most other names that you hear. And, we thought that, it'd be a tribute to that band kind of, and a tribute to Bill Blackman, who, I'm sure you heard of Bill Blackman. John's written a couple songs about him. He was a friend of ours that, died right before we came to Florida. And Bill had always liked that name of that, the Iced Earth. And so we kind of thought that, hey man, let's honor him with that name. And that's kind of how that all came to be. And once we talked about it like that, we started liking the name more and more, and it just stuck,
Cool.
That was that.
So I remember showing off. One of us, me and Chuck, we were showing out Enter the Realm demos. One of the 1000s we are. I'm sure that you commented on something saying that it meant a lot for you guys to go and record that. Like, did you expect it to be such a big thing when you actually were recording it?
Expecting, I don't know. Hoping, yeah. We were hoping it would be. Again, this was a time we'd only been a band, between being Purgatory and becoming Iced Earth. This was just like at the 2-year mark or so. And we were, again, in this rush to gotta do something, man. We gotta get somewhere. And, John had talked to me on more than one occasion about, dude, this next project, if whatever we do doesn't do something, man, I think I'm just gonna, quit the band or break it up or whatever and try something different, man. And I don't know if he had that conversation with everyone in the band. I think, he and Gene and myself had talked about it. So we knew that there was a lot on the line when we went into doing it. And as the song Colors, once we were jamming that and getting that together in our rehearsals, you could feel the energy from that song, and then into, all the others that started coming up. And when John's bringing these riffs in, and, it had a feeling to it, like, man, if nothing else, we're going to impress some people, man. We had that feeling that people would be talking about it 30 some years later. And I don't know if any of us expected that necessarily, but there was an energy about that whole process, man. There was just, because John saying that if this was going to be it for him, maybe it just gave us that extra fire and determination to really put our all into it. Plus, we had a little bit bigger budget at that time. I think we spent like $3,000 on the recording, and I think we had another $2,000 set aside for the artwork and the reproduction and everything like that. So, I mean, I think we just all around felt better about it. We weren't going in doing some half-assed demo on a $500 budget. We had a little bit of money behind us, not much, but it seemed like a lot. It just everything was amplified. At that point, everybody's focus was on that and doing the best we could and trying to prove ourselves, I guess.
And it shows as well. I probably sound like a parrot. I keep repeating myself, but yeah, that demo, considering it cost less than the debut album in terms of budget, it's the better product, and it's the better product in my eyes. To my ears as well. It just sounds. It's just got a fuller, rawer sound, and you can tell the band is hungry in that demo as well, and it's fantastic. I love that demo so much.
It's aged so well.
Yeah, yeah, it has.
Sounds great still.
I agree with the sound of it. I think as opposed to the first Iced Earth album, I think it it's definitely, it shows just there's a rawness about it, I guess. And I don't know. It just sounds more live, I guess, to me, and the energy is a little higher, I think, than those songs on the first album.
So I find that these days, especially in metal, you kind of lose that in modern recording. You lose that kind of that energy, that rawness, and that the band that feels alive. You kind of if you you put on anything from like the 80s or before that in terms of rock and metal, and then you put something on in 2018 that's modern, you can tell there's a big difference in the kind of vibe it has. Yeah. I don't know whether it's bands are so spoiled by what they can kind of hide in the recording process nowadays. Because there's a lot of things that makes band lazy now. You'll get a drummer who will play his drum parts. I said this in another video, and they'll just put samples on it, or they'll just like, oh, that snare hit is a bit out. It's just let's just plop it on click, so it's dead on click. They can do a lot of things like.
Yeah.
So I think like that demo in particular really shows the time of music and that kind of rawity. And that's what I love about 80s metal in general. It's one of my favourite it's probably the golden era for me when it comes to metal music. and I think it shows with the recording quality. As with budgets as small as $3,000 as well, it just shows what you can do. Back then, with $3,000 was quite good in my opinion.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, we were in the, I don't know if all of the stuff was recorded on that in Morrisound's big 24-track room. If not all of it, most of it was. So I mean, with being in their 24-track room, that was more money per hour that we had to put into it. Awesome. And again, back to the the sound on that, as opposed to like newer stuff or any older sounds as opposed to newer. There's something about when you go in a studio and you've got a big reel-to-reel with the tape on it, and you got to play your shit, man. It's kind of like waiting for a race to start. You're waiting for that that gun to
the horses.
You're just you're hyped up. And I've recorded in the 90s and the 2000s and stuff with Pro Tools, which is cool. But you're right, you get lazy and or you can get lazy, I guess I should say. It's so easy. Oh, we missed a snare hit or a cymbal crash or the guitarist messed up. You just take it from one section and pop it in, and there you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of copy and paste, definitely.
Yeah, it's convenient, and don't get me wrong, it's a cool technology, but it's a time saver as well. But there's something about going in there and you just know you gotta, damn, I'm being recorded right now, man. I gotta make this perfect or as close as I can, Maybe that's where some of that energy comes from. I don't know, but I know the feeling when I've recorded to tape as opposed to using Pro Tools and stuff. The feeling is I'm more on alert. I've got to really pay attention to what was going on, and at least that's my outlook, I guess.
So Into the Realm comes out. That kind of leads to your exit from the band. So can you tell us about what kind of led to that?
Yeah, I don't know how long after Enter the Realm came out. It might have been close to a year before I left. And in that time, we recorded again, songs like The Funeral and Haunted House. We did another 5 songs to give to anybody that was interested in, hearing the band or wanting to hear if we had more besides Enter the Realm. So after that recording, there was just a lot of shit going on in the band at the time. A lot of tension was building, it seemed, at least from my aspect. I know John and I were kind of wearing on each other a little bit, and we had, since 1985 up to 1989, basically lived together most of the time. We worked together pretty much all the time, and then we were in the band together all the time, so constantly around each other. Yeah. There were, like the last year that I was in the band, there was a period where we each had our own apartments and stuff, but we were living in the same complex, working at that complex together. So again, we were living right next to each other, working together, being in the band together. You start getting, what used to be funny, you're messing with somebody, sometimes, you start wearing on each other, and, you get a little shitty about things, and there was just a lot of stuff, a lot of pressure. John was putting a ton of pressure on himself, to make things happen, and a lot of drinking and other things that weren't probably the best things for people that are under constant stress and pressure to be doing. And again, you're around each other when you're drunk or something, and you say something and it's taken the wrong way, and later on you're thinking back about it like, what a dick, man, I can't believe he said that, or just, I think it all came from a lot of stress. and not stopping ever. We were constantly doing something, man. And I also knew that things were really amping up because Enter the Realm was doing, getting noticed. We were getting fan mail from South America and from Europe and stuff from magazines and, Europe and things like that. We were starting to get write-ups and, all this, and the pressure was on. And I didn't really feel that at that point my playing was up to par with the other guys in the band. I never really practiced by myself. I'd have to, get to in order to do that, it wasn't like I had a guitar and I could sit in my room or in my apartment somewhere and just strum and play stuff and, quietly. It's kind of hard to play drums quietly. So in order for me to practice by myself, I would have to go to, our rehearsal room, and jam and stuff like that. And I was, to be quite honest, kind of lazy about, doing that. And I probably should have, and, just tightened up my playing and worked on, things that I needed to work on. But I knew an album deal was pretty much gonna happen. And I just kind of, with everything going on, I just kind of, felt I didn't want to let anybody down, and I just made my exit, man. And that was that.
Now, my question is, did you follow the band after your exit? And if you count Days of Purgatory, you have the first 5 albums have 5 different drummers. At any of those times that there was an exit, did you ever think about, or was you not even follow them? Did you ever think about reaching out and trying to get back in?
No, I mean, I followed them. Obviously when the first album came out, I remember prior to that, actually, when the record deal was signed, I remember meeting John at a bar and having some drinks and talking about it and everything. And, once the first album did come out, he gave me a copy and everything. And, I listened to it and everything. And I was, following him at that point. And then when Storm Rider came out, I remember hearing that because I think I was living with Dave at the time, and he played me he played that for me, and I was like, holy shit, man! It was like first album's here. Storm Rider to me is like at least 2 steps above the first album, production wise, I think, and just. The songs, I still love that album. It's my favorite Iced Earth album to this day. So yeah, I was still following them and talking to all of them at that point. And probably, I don't know, around the time Storm Rider came out is when Bill, Owen, and myself started putting a band together, or talking about it at least, which would become the Sanctum or Inner Sanctum. And so I kind of wasn't paying attention, to Iced Earth as much at that point, when we're trying to get my own thing going again. And by the time their third album came out, John and I had already had a falling out and weren't on speaking terms at that point. So after that, around the time Dark Saga, was that it?
Burn Offerings.
That's it, yeah. Around the time that came out, from then until the early 2000s, I would hear about a new album of theirs coming out, or I might talk to Dave once in a while, or I wasn't really paying too much attention to them. I was aware that they were still out there and putting albums out and stuff, but in those years as well, I pretty much had my own different bands going on too, so that's where my concentration was.
You briefly took part in the Unearthed project with Gene and Bill at some point, right?
Really my only participation in that is I played one song with them at the Chicago Metal Fest in 2005, I think it was. But yeah, at that time I had my band Sanctum, and I was back in Indiana at that time. So yeah, I really didn't do anything with Unearthed.
Okay.
Is there anything you're doing now concerning music?
No, I haven't done anything, gosh, in quite a while. A good probably 7 or 8 years now since I've really done anything with music, other than listen to music. You know. Yeah, I really haven't done it. Last thing I did was I recorded one song. It was an instrumental track for this band called Horrifier. They were putting an album out. They're from New Jersey, I think, and they asked if I would be on, one of their tracks, and I said sure. So they sent me down actually emailed me a file to listen to, and I jammed to it for a while. Then I went into Red Room Recorders, which Mark Prater has, or used to. I don't know if he still has it anymore, but and he engineered, the drum track for me, and that was, I think that was back in like 2010, something like that.
What was the band called, sorry?
What's that?
What was the band called?
Horrifier.
Oh, no. Yeah. I misheard you. I thought you said Valenfire, and I was like, I know that band. Doesn't matter.
Oh, no. Wasn't them.
Now, we have some viewer questions to get here in a few minutes. Do you have some cool stuff to show us, I believe?
Yeah, I got a few things.
And also, do you have you're losing a little bit of light. Do you have a light switch that you could hit to maybe give us a little bit more light, or is it already on?
The only light in this room is
already on. Okay.
If I move, is that any better, or is it still?
Is it okay with you, Jason?
Yeah, I can still see you, so that's all right.
Okay. Okay.
Don't know if that's
so what do you got? What kind of goodies you got to show us?
Okay. Got a couple things here. I've got the first Iced Earth promo picture. I don't know if you can see that. Is there a glare on that? Or?
No.
Yeah, lift it up a little bit more. Okay, it's not in frame.
How's that?
That's cool, man. I like the lightning going down. That's cool.
Yeah. Yep. At that. I've got some old copies. You guys might already have this stuff. I don't know. I've got the Iced Earth.
No one has that.
Wait. Sorry. There's an Iced Earth demo of Horror Show.
Yeah.
When did that happen? And why don't I have it in my collection?
God, I don't know when the hell it happened. Probably
Damn it!
1988 or something like that.
Oh man.
That is so cool.
Oh, no, that's ruined everything. That means my cassette collection is not complete.
You might have to search high and low, sir.
I can't. If I type in Iced Earth Horror Show, it's just going to come up with the Horror Show cassette that came out in 2001. No.
Yeah, I've never seen that available anywhere.
Can we negotiate a deal, Greg?
Gene showed us. What did Gene show us? Was he?
He showed us Burning Oasis Purgatory cassette.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the Burning Oasis here, but this one
that's
I
live.
There. Yeah, I wrote live in there. That was like a sunset show that we did. I think it might have been about the time Richard, like the last show he did with us. It was recorded through the soundboard. I don't even know if that's the real tape in there anymore, if it's something else. And of course I've got the Enter the Realm. Awesome. And, 1,000 of those were made. I doubt that many exist anymore. But I do know there was, if you guys remember the comedian Sam Kinison. Do you remember Sam Kinison? Of
course.
Said,
Say it!
Yeah, he'd yell and everything. Well, he came to the Sundome here at the USF campus, and John had taken a copy with him to the show, and we were in like the upper level where he snuck down to the ground floor and made his way up to the stage while Sam Kinison was on there and chucked a copy up to him. I don't know if Sam Kinison ever actually got it or not, but John got thrown out of the show that night. But, so Sam Kinison might have had one of our Enter the Realm tapes. And then this here, last time I talked to you guys, I was telling you about the recording we did after Enter the Realm.
Yes.
That had, it's known kind of as Iced Earth Demo 89. It had Haunted House written on the walls, Life and Death, The Funeral, and Plea of Insanity. And this is my little handwritten copy from back then.
Are you going to be able to fix that?
I think so. I've see the tape got eaten.
Yeah, you're gonna do some tape surgery. Yeah.
Yes. The good thing is though, it is at the very end. But I don't know. I can't remember if it was at the beginning of the songs or at the very ending. Either way, most if not all of it should be salvageable. So.
That's amazing. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's again, it's between that and Enter the Realm. That's pretty much everything that was on the first Iced Earth album, except for the heck's the name of that song? When the Night Falls. So, and then this.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Might be the only one in existence anymore. Not sure.
Do not call John Schafer. That's not his number.
Yes.
Well, feel free to call the number, but it just won't be the person you think it is.
Yeah, there you go. This is a little business card he made back in, God, I think he was in 10th grade in high school.
That's historic.
Man,
Yeah.
you can totally see like the DNA that kind of led to Purgatory and Iced Earth with that logo, because like John's got the similar kind of the way he does the R and stuff like that, the way he draws.
Yep.
The DNA is still intact with the Purgatory and Iced Earth logos.
Yeah.
Greg, could you send
That's awesome.
could you send me a photo of that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I need to make that as a patch so it goes on my Iced Earth jacket, because then it'll be an Iced Earth complete jacket.
There you go, man. That's cool.
That's what I want to do.
Yep. I don't know if any of
That's
these.
so awesome.
If John would have had any, I know a few years back, his basement at his house in Indiana flooded, I guess. And if he had anything, I know he had a bunch of pictures from back when we were 16, 17 years old, and he hasn't had a chance to look through everything yet, he said, but chances are it's probably ruined, if he had any. So that could be the only card.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how I got my cassette, was through John. This was in the flood, and he gave it to Larry Tarnowski, and it's got some damage it's got some damage, and I'm afraid to take it out because it's got some water damage. But this was in the flood.
I'm surprised it looks that good if it was in, got any water on it and stuff, man. That's
I need to
cool.
get it resealed.
it's funny. It's funny, Chuck, because both yours and mine are technically imperfect, because my one doesn't have the correct case, and yours is water damaged. So,
I love mine, as do you.
yeah.
And Sam Kinison loved his too.
I hope he did.
It should probably. I don't know. He might not even have one. It might still be in wherever that club was. It might still be under the stage, fell down the cracks or something.
It could be lost for all time, in this little cavern somewhere. Who knows? But,
The mystery of the hidden Iced Earth demo.
Yeah,
The hunt begins.
I had a couple other items, but I cannot locate them at the moment.
Do you still have the high school book?
Oh, yes, I do have that. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this. Let's see, where are we? Can you see my finger in the shot? What the hell What the hell am I? Probably making everyone sick about right now. You see that?
Okay.
Or-
Where are you at?
Hold on, God. This. Where are we at? God, this is annoying.
Are you drunk, Greg?
Aha. No, I feel like it though. Yeah. There, you see old Johnny?
Now, is this what grade is this?
10th grade.
10th grade. Sophomore
What's
riff master.
Can you explain grade 10 to me? Because obviously I'm English, so I don't understand your school systems.
It's after 9 and before 11.
You're a dick.
There's my ugly ass right there. So.
You're a dick. No, but what's the age range for grade 10?
It's probably about 16.
Yeah, 15,
Right, okay.
16, depending on when you were born. You know,
Yeah.
what time of year you were born. But I think we were 15.
Because in my schools we have years 1 to 5 is primary school, like junior school or whatever you want to call it over there, and then years 6 to 11 is secondary school or high school. So that's how we do it. So it's like from 4 till 11 years old is primary school. From 11 till 17 is like secondary or high school, I suppose. Very different over here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bit, man.
Thank you for showing those historical things.
You're welcome.
That's fucking history
And
right
before,
there.
right? Yeah. Before we get started on the viewer questions, can you tell us about you seeing John last year and how that went?
Yeah, man. You know, John and Gene kind of reconnected after Gene's interview with you guys on Podcast and Stone, and you know that kind of set the ball in motion, man, for a lot of things that have happened in the past year. And you know, Bill I guess Bill's been in contact with John, you know, on and off probably for like the last 10 years or so. And once Gene and John were talking again, and Bill, you know, was in the mix, you know, I don't know how it came about exactly, but they started talking about, you know, recording some old stuff. And I know John kind of wanted to give Gene his, you know, give him, you know, a chance to go back in and, you know, and do some songs like, you know, with better production and things like that, and more of something fun to do, I guess. And you know, anyway, they were working on that stuff, and Bill was telling me about it, and John happened to be in town like last November. It was right around Thanksgiving time, and you know, Bill's like, "Hey, dude, you want to come up here? We're gonna have dinner and, you know, hang out a bit and you know, just freak John out, man." And you know, we were hanging out a couple months ago, and he, you know, your name came up, and he was like, "Man, I'd like to see him again. You know, it'd be a trip." And so anyway, I was like, "Yeah, I'll go up there, man." And so John knew absolutely nothing about me showing up, and so they're sitting at this table, and I got to the place, and I asked the lady that worked there. I'm like, "Hey, you know, I'm looking for these guys. A couple of them got long hair." And she, "Oh yeah, I know, they're right over here." I was like, "Hold on, I'm gonna like walk behind you so I can get up to the table, you know, without being seen." And so I kind of like hide behind her, and I didn't need to really, because, you know, when I get there, I was like, "Hey," you know, I said something stupid like, "Hey, you guys are here for the early bird special or something this evening?" And John's like looking at me and looking at Bill and Gene, like, "Who the hell is this, man?" And I'm like, "You guys come here often?" And, you know, just saying stupid shit. And I'm finally like, "God damn it, it's Greg Seymour, man." And he's like, "Holy shit." You know, it took him totally by surprise, which was cool, because that was the intention. But anyway, we hung out, you know, for a couple hours, the four of us did, and, you know, just talked, shot the shit. And then I think between the European and American tours last year, John was in the Tampa area again, and I hooked up and had lunch with him. You know, again, we hung out for a couple hours and talked, and, you know, just decided to like start over, you know, and not talk about dumb shit that, you know, happened in the past or anything like that. And we've been in touch here and there throughout the year, mostly through texting because I don't want to bother the dude. I don't know what his hours are, and I know he's got a ton of stuff going on. So, we just, I think he's coming down again. He was here last weekend. I wasn't able to get together with the guys, but I think he's going to be down again this month, or in December maybe. Might be December. I'll try to hang out with him again then. But it's all due to you two. So
as a fan, it's so cool to see you got the pictures of you guys together, and just it's just not, and that's no ill respect to the current lineup. It's just so cool to see you guys hanging out together. It's so cool to see.
Cool, man. Yeah,
it's really cool just to see old friends kind of reconnect, because there's people I used to know that I'm probably never going to see again, and it kind of makes me a bit sad. And when I see friends kind of reconnect like that, it is heartwarming, especially when it's people that you kind of look up to from the past, like you guys, from Purgatory and stuff. And it's really cool, man.
That's cool.
Right.
Man.
As a Maiden fan, it would be so cool to see a picture online of Steve Harris and Paul Di'Anno and Bruce Dickinson hanging out.
Oh yeah,
sure, man. It'd be so cool. It's just so cool as a fan to see that. So
yeah, that's true, man. And it's been cool for all of us. We're not young anymore, so again, it's good to everybody's making an attempt, several times throughout the year to talk at least, or to say something to the other guy, and I think it's great because it seems like the current lineup of Iced Earth and everything, they seem really cool, and those guys seem excited about it too, and and I think everybody's goddamn excited, man. So.
Right.
We're very fortunate of the stuff that's happened in this last year with us, with Podcast and Stone. We're very privileged to. I think we're some of the only two fans that have direct contact with John Schafer, which is ridiculous to me. I look at my Skype contacts. It's like John Schafer, Bill Owen, Gene Adam, Matt Barlow. It goes on and on and on. I'm just like, if you told me this 2 years ago, I'd go get out of town.
Yeah.
Don't joke.
As a fan, that's got to kind of blow your mind, huh?
It does, and I remember
every day.
Yeah, and when Gene passed on John's email to us, we were me and Chuck sat down and we were like, look, we've made something special, and we're reaping some kind of reward as fans. That's a reward. Yeah, we get to speak to John, speak to you, speak to anybody that's been in the band or has any type of history. We were like, right, we cannot bother John at all. Right, we do our interview, then we leave him be. We can't nag him, yeah. And then there's been people that have messaged me that kind of know that I've got his email and like, dude, can I have John's email because I really want to ask him. I was like, no, you can't. Get out. You can't. No. I've been given it under strict instructions to not give it to anyone ever. So.
Well, we gave out his number earlier today on the Rose card.
If you if you wanna contact John Schafer of the Rose, you might have to take a time machine to 1985 or whenever it was, and then maybe you might get through to him all right. But
But
you have to have a black leather jacket or he won't talk to you.
Yeah, you got to.
My point being though, it's like when we started this podcast and stuff, and we got Gene on, and we got Randall on, and people like that. And it's like I said to Chuck, because I'm quite a pessimist in reality. I'm quite negative. I'm kind of like, that's never gonna happen. I'm kind of like that a lot of the time because life is overrated. But I said to him, I said to Chuck, we're never gonna get John, right? We're never going to get John Schafer on this because he's too busy, blah 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 blah. He hasn't got time for a little podcast like us. And how wrong was I?
Yeah, man.
It's madness.
Yeah, you got him. What you got
3 hours?
3 hours with the dude, man. That's
3 hours.
Awesome.
That's madness. That's madness.
So you got some questions there, Jason? And I have a.
I do. I
there
have
was
questions.
the first question I have was phoned in to me this morning while I was at work, from a viewer. His name's Bill Owen,
Oh, God's sake.
and he wants to know what your favorite city in Iowa is and why.
Oh, God. Well, it's a city that not many people have probably heard of. It's called Alcruz, Iowa. It's actually a make-believe little town that back when we used to partake in certain substances, we made up little weird skits, you know, kind of like kind of Monty Python kind of stuff. And Alcruz, Iowa was a place we made up. So does that answer your question, Bill?
Population 0.
Yeah.
Okay. Jason has the old set of questions, and I'll have the new ones, since this was supposed to take place a couple months ago.
All right.
Yeah.
Some of them may have already been answered.
Right. The first question comes from my bruv, Ulysses Hernandez. He asks, "What's your favourite modern band?" Coming out swinging.
I could not tell you really. I don't listen to enough newer music to, you know, I've got favorite stuff of bands that have been around for 30 years that are still putting albums out, but, you know, like new to me would have been like Lamb of God, I guess, and they've been out for about 20 years now, so I guess I better brush up on my music, huh?
New music is over. New bands are overrated anyway.
That's right, man.
Says you, Chuck, with a full fanboy.
I love Witherfall. Second album coming out soon.
They're modern, so you can't say modern is shit, you know. See what I mean? See, look, you contradicted your own statement. This cannot be done. Right. John Baylor asks, what genre of music other than heavy metal do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of different genres, mostly like old blues stuff, from like the 1930s and 40s, like real old, where it sounds like it was recorded on a little toy recording machine or something. I listen to jazz a lot, and of course I still listen to stuff like Kiss and Boston and old Aerosmith, all that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff from the '60s. Just a plethora of musical variety.
Nice.
One second, I've messed up my thing. Damn it! I hate Facebook. Does Facebook ever refresh itself for no reason? And I've got to look for this goddamn questions again. Don't you hate Facebook? I don't, because we have an awesome group, Podcast Insane. Have you heard of it? It's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. The fuck is this? Right, here we go. Found it. Right. Sorry about that. Right. Chris Lata asks, what happened with Sanctum?
What happened with Sanctum? Probably me moving back to Florida again happened to Sanctum. I about 10 years ago decided to come back to Florida from Indiana, and just basically had to break the band up at that point. We actually still have a drum and guitar tracks from a second recording that we were doing that's never been finished, so I don't know if it'll ever be completed, but Sanctum is no more.
That sucks. I got the Hands of Time cassette.
Okay.
And it's really good.
If that now here's let's clarify this, because I had Sanctum after years after the band The Sanctum with Bill. If that's what he's referring to, you know, the Sanctum when Bill Owen was in the band, that we couldn't keep our lineup together. We were getting some momentum going locally, had the recording done, we're, you know, shopping that around and stuff, and we just couldn't keep our lineup together. And you know, Bill had a young daughter at home at the time that, you know, he needed to be with as much as possible, and, you know, if people weren't taking shit seriously, we had to move on, I guess, and it just kind of fell apart now.
Do you think that part of the decline of the band was booking gigs to imaginary cities in Iowa?
That could have hurt, yes. Yes, it very well could have hurt. Yeah.
Chuck Hoskins, 10 points for that question, by the way.
Yeah, that was nice, man.
that was good timing. This next question comes from a young kid. You may know him as the Ice Demon. His name's Gene Adam.
Yes.
He asks for you to share the story about the first time you met Bill Owen.
Oh man, I can't go into that in a public forum, man.
That bad, huh?
Yeah, it was. Ask Bill about it if you talk to him. I can't say it over the airwaves.
We will be interviewing him tomorrow.
So are you sure Bill won't just broadcast it over the airwaves?
I don't know. He might. I don't know.
Okay, sorry, Gene, didn't answer your question.
Sorry.
That young kid's gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, he is.
Shattering his dreams now, Craig. That's what you're doing. Jason Lacey asks for you to talk about a time. He says we, so I'm guessing you know who Jason Lacey is. He says, talk about the time we met Kevin Dubrow from Quiet Riot.
Yes, that was there were a couple times that we met Kevin Dubrow. He was in town producing an album for some glam band at Morrisound Studios, and we were in doing one of our Purgatory demos. I can't remember which one, but we were in the waiting room, kind of where there were tables and the foosball table and the video game and stuff, and we're all hanging out in there drinking beer in between. Maybe Gene might have been in doing vocals, or we were just on break. I don't know, but Kevin Dubrow comes in. He's got his lunch with him, sits down, and at this table, and he'd gotten a hair transplant from a couple of years before. He'd had been almost bald and stuff in Quiet Riot, and then at this point he's got this like a lion mane on his head, and so we're making fun of that, like, nice hair, Kevin, and saying shit like that. And John walked by him and farted in his face when he was eating his sandwich, and the poor bastard didn't say anything. I think he knew he was outnumbered, and there was, within that same time frame, we went one night. We're at a after hours bottle club when most of the other bars had closed, and I was trying to give him a copy of our demo, and he was having nothing to do with me, so I started cussing him out and threatening to kick his ass in the club, and basically was drug out of the place, yelling and cursing at Kevin Dubrow, and that's my little story.
Was this after they had made it big with Mental Health, or before?
Oh yeah, this is Mental Health was in '83. This is in probably '86, early '87. Yeah, so they were, had been one of the biggest bands around for a couple of years there. Didn't matter to us. We didn't like them, and we let them know it. So
there you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's all you covered. Adam Ortiz challenges you to a beer drinking contest.
I'd
You accept?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Adam Ortiz, he accepts. You've
As
got
former,
I'll be the judge.
as former vice president of Iced Earth, you accept, yes?
yes, I do.
Yes.
Right, you've got to choose a location, a time, and get your Colt 44 pistols at the ready. Oh wait, sorry, wrong showdown.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop talking shit now and actually go to the next question. Next question comes from Kevin Keane. I'm guessing you know him as well because it sounds like by his question you know who he is.
Yes.
Ask him when is he going to buy me a BB gun, and what happened to mine. That's an awesome story involving a fat girl, the cops, in an attic, or the shit shut Sunday.
Well,
These people get you in trouble.
yeah, they might. The BB gun, Kevin, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to your BB gun. It might still be in the attic that we crawled through to escape the police. He had a BB gun, like a little rifle, I think it was, BB rifle, and I don't know why we ended up with it. But John and I decided one afternoon it'd be fun to shoot the girl across the street in the butt with a BB gun, which we did. And I guess they called the police on us. We had to escape the house that we were in by climbing through the attic and dropping down in the other. It was a duplex, two apartments together, and we dropped down in the other side of the duplex, which was occupied luckily by a girl that we knew. And then we escaped out a window and had to ride to practice that night on the floorboard of someone's car so we wouldn't be seen by anybody, laying on the floor in the back seat of their car. We had to get over to Richard's house and get to practice. But yeah, don't ever leave guns around idiotic, crazed musicians. And then I think you mentioned the shit Sunday. Another thing never to leave around would have been your family's heirloom crystal collection, because you never know what might end up in it. If that explains that.
Steve Gray. Steve Gray asks, ask him about the show at Rob's Kingdom with Inner Sanctum and the subsequent misunderstanding regarding people believing that Inner Sanctum was the newly reformed Iced Earth.
Yeah, that might have been something that in the mid-'90s there that led to John and I having our big falling out. And I hadn't even thought about that until I read that question on Facebook. I don't remember who it was or how they heard something, but I think we played our show at our singer's parents' house. We set this whole stage up and had a keg party and played a show. And I think it was after the show that someone came up and was saying, "Yeah, you guys are the new Iced Earth or some shit," and we're like, "No, what the hell are you talking about, man?" But I guess that was a rumor that got started. And actually at that point, Bill and I were trying to distance ourselves from having been in Purgatory and Iced Earth, because we wanted to try and do something again without that being, a
label.
Yeah. So I don't know who started that or whatever, but it caused quite a bit of shit. So fuck you.
Suck it.
Now suck.
Now suck.
Next question comes from Leon Glover. He has a few questions. He's been a bit greedy. How dare he?
Yeah.
He says, questions for Greg. What song would you like to re-record? Who was the jokester? Who was the most creative? And what was the average bar tab? A few
okay. Yeah. What song would I like to record again? If it were from the Purgatory era, it would be Lobotomy, probably. And then who was the jokester? Who wasn't the jokester? We were all pretty crazy, man. Everybody did dumb shit, and was always, we were always pulling pranks on each other. And what were the last two pieces of that question?
Who was the most creative, and what was the average bar tab?
Creative, musically, I guess I'd have to say John. What was the average bar tab? Shit, I don't know. It was a lot.
Kevin King comments, Sam, bar tab? What bar tab? We stole the beer.
Yeah, well, we did that too, yeah. We did a thing where we, at the Sunset Club, where we would distract the bartender, Sandy, sometimes, while somebody had a pitcher or two behind the counter and was filling them up. We'd have her, hey, come over here and look at this, and got plenty of free beer that way. But, yeah.
Cool.
It happens.
That's the end of those questions. Do you have the next set of questions, Chuck?
I do, and a couple of them are just the repeats, and a couple of them are just for Bill and stuff we've already answered. So.
Cool.
So, thank you for spending the time with us today. In closing, or before we let you go, recently, unfortunately, we lost Richard Bateman, and I had talked to him once on Facebook and told him about our show, and he had agreed to do it, and of course, he never got to do it. For those of us who didn't know him personally, can you tell us a cool story or tell us something about him?
Really, I mean, I don't have a particular story that I can think of right, off the bat, but Richard was probably like the friendliest, easiest going guy you could meet. Didn't have an ego about him. I mean, he could have had a big ass ego because, again, like I said earlier, the dude was a monster player, man. That's all he did was play music, man. He just was a really likable guy. I hadn't talked to him much in the past, 10 years or so. But everybody loved Richard, man. I always, since his passing, I haven't heard one bad thing about him from anybody. It's just, all these stories of how nice he was, how he always had a smile. If someone else was feeling bad, he'd try to cheer him up and everything. And, just a damn good person, excellent musician, and a really good friend, man. He's just an all-around cool guy. And at least, I know it's sad and it was unexpected for sure, his passing, but, at the very least, at least Richard got to do what he loved doing for the majority of his life, man. I mean, until the end, he was, if he wasn't in one band, he was in 3 bands at once, I mean, he just was always playing, man, so.
With that being said, this episode will be dedicated to Richard Bateman. Yeah, may he rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, man.
And I have one final question before we go, Greg. Did I read this correctly that you contributed some linear notes for the new Purgatory project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote some stuff. I don't know how much. I just wrote a couple of paragraphs. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen the finished product yet or anything. I thought that was awesome. John, when we were talking, like, hey, dude, if you want to write something about it, or, about the band back then, just write something down and send it to me, which I thought was really cool of him. So I even though I'm not playing on the release, I still feel like a part of it.
Right.
Which is cool. And definitely sucks, Richard wasn't around to see this thing or to even be on the podcast, because I know he would have been a really interesting person to talk to for you guys. But
yeah, I've seen, obviously, we didn't know the guy, but one thing that I've noticed throughout people, remembering him and stuff is that, and showing photos, is that he's always smiling, man. Looked like he was always smiling.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to see,
Yeah, again, like I was saying, he always had a a joke or just something positive to say. He wasn't a guy like, again, before, before Dave replaced him and when Richard was in the band Purgatory, it was almost like Richard didn't belong with us. I mean, he did. We all hung out and we partied and all that, but he was so nice, and the rest of us were a bunch of dicks, man. And, but yeah, Richard, everybody liked him. All sorts of people, man. People that were from his high school that were like the jocks, the football players, the wrestlers, all that. They all loved him, man. Just a good guy. So.
That's all I have, Jason. You got anything else before we conclude?
Just one thing, and one thing only. Do you consider yourself still the reigning vice president?
Goddamn straight I do. Don't you forget it.
That's the right answer. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our interview with the one and only Greg Seymour. I've been Jason. I've been joined by the incomparable Chuck Hoskins. We have been, of course, joined by the awesome Greg Seymour. I'm trying to think of a
Vice President.
Vice President, and don't you fucking forget it, alright?
That's
Vice
right.
President Greg Seymour. Greg, thank you for your time, man.
Hey, anytime, guys.
It's been a blast.
Yeah, anytime, man. Thank you.
Everybody, once again, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay metal because metal lives, my friends. See you later.
I think he froze up there.
That was it for Jason, man.